Now we were talking about Amos. Amos is Amos was a shepherd. We already determined that, and he was also a farmer. He actually, and that's what he did. And it was his job to come up and tell these guys, prophesy to them, right? And when you look at the name Amos, it's short for Amos. It was just a shortened version of his name. And the thing is, you know, they were prospering at that time, weren't they? Israel was prospering and getting better. But sometimes numbers aren't what really makes a difference, is it?
No.
It's our spiritual growth, isn't it? How we follow God is what matters. The numbers don't matter because people are really happy. They thought everything was going good. And what was going on? Amos had to come and tell them, you know. And it says in verse 1, in chapter 1 of Amos, the word of Amos, who was among the shepherds of Tekoa, which he was concerning Israel in the days of Azariah, king of Judah, in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joshua, king of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. And he said, 2 years before the earthquake. Well, guess what? There's nothing in the Bible saying about the earthquake. So it had to be something significant to them guys back then, but we don't know what it is. It's kind of like back when we had the snow in, I think it was 87, we had the big huge snow. There for a while you probably used that as a timeline saying, hey, when we had the big snow, you know. So this was just like, well, when we had that earthquake. And this is when he came. And it says in verse 2, the Lord roars from Zion and utters his voice from Jerusalem. The pastures of the shepherds mourn, and the top of the Carmel withers. Thus says the Lord, for three transgressions of Damascus, and for 4 I will not turn away in punishment. Damascus now, that's Syria. When they talk about Damascus, he's talking about Syria. And he's saying because they have in verse 2, because they have thrashed, verse 3, Gideon in implement of iron. But I will send a fire into the house of Hazael, which shall devour the place of Benhar. I will break the gates bars of Damascus. I will cut off the inhabitants in the valley of Avion, and one who holds the scepter for Beth-Eden. The people of Syria shall go captive to Kir, says the Lord. You know, the Israelites are probably right now cheering because they know how bad that was there. And they're like, man, God's going to take care of us. Because he says he's going to set fire to them. He's going to, break the gates down. And that's what he's going to do. But then he goes in verse 6 and he says, thus says the Lord, for three transgressions of Gaza, and for 4 I will turn away the punishment, because they took captive the whole captivity, deliver them up to Edom. But I will send a fire upon the walls of Gaza, which shall devour its palace. I will cut off the inhabitants for Ashab, and the one who holds the scepter for Ascalon. I will turn my hands against Ekron, and the remnants of Palestine shall perish, says the Lord. So now, he's prophesying about Palestine, isn't he? He's saying, boy, these guys here, they're going to be taken care of too. You know, if you start thinking about that, you're thinking, wow, look where we're at. They're really looking at this. And then he says in verse 9, thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of tyrant, and for 4, I will turn away its punishment, because it delivered up the whole captivity at Edom, and did not remember the covenant of brotherhood. But I will send a fire upon the walls of Tyre, which shall devour its place. These are the Palestinians that he's talking about here, and he's going to bring in and have them devoured too. And then in verse 11 he says, "Thus says the Lord, for three transgressions of Edom, for 4, I will not turn away in punishment, because are pursuing his brother with a sword, and cast off all pity, his anger toward perpetually, and he kept his more wrath there forever. But I will send a fire upon Temian, which shall devour the place of Bozia." The Edomites were descendants of Lot, of Esau. The twins of Jacob. So this is who they are. And he's going to take care of them. And then he says in verse 13, thus says the Lord, for three transgressions of the people of Ammon, and for 4, I will not turn away in punishment, because they ripped open the women with child in Gilead, that they might enlarge their territory. But I will kindle a fire in the walls of Rahab, and I shall devour its place, amid shouting of the days of battle, and the tempest in the days of the whirlwinds. Their king shall give into captivity, and he, the princess, together, says the Lord. Now, the Miniams, that was the youngest daughter of Lot. And you remember, Lot's daughters were afraid that they weren't going to be able to have kids. If there was any men around, what did they do? They deceived their dad to sleep with them. So you see now where some of these stuff's coming back to haunt them. And then in chapter 2 it says, thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Moab, and for 4, I will turn away and punishment, because he burned the bones of the king of Edom to line. But I will send a fire upon Moab, and I shall devour the place of Kerith. Moab shall die with turmoil, with shouting and trumpet sound. And I will cut off the judgment for its midst, and slay all its princesses with him, says the Lord. Now this here, the Moabs, they came from the oldest daughter of Lot. And she was the one that schemed to sleep with her dad. So, you know, all these guys are getting punishments. And they're probably like, wow, he came here to give us some good stuff, didn't he? But then in verse 4 in chapter 2, he says, thus says the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Judah, and for 4, I will not turn away its punishment, because they have despised the laws of the Lord, and have not kept his commandments. Their lies leads them astray, lies with their fathers following. But I will send a fire upon Judah, and I shall devour the place of Jerusalem. They weren't following the laws, were they? And he said, Judah, you being led astray. And what does it say for us? And like in Luke 48, in the middle of the verse here, it says, for everyone who much is given, for him much will be required. And to whom much has been committed, of him they will ask for more. So we got to remember as we read this, as Christians, every time we read our Bible, every time we have a Bible study, every time we learn more, there's more required of us, isn't there?
Yes.
We got to remember that we are supposed to be doing what we're supposed to learn. When we learn it, if we're just opening up our Bible and reading, it's as easy as that, because we know more now, so we're expected to do more. We're held up to a higher standard as we learn. And this is what he's telling, Judah, they do everything, and they still were led astray. They weren't following what they were supposed to follow. And this is easy for us to fall into, isn't it? But then in verse 6, he says, thus says the Lord, for three transgressions of Israel, and for 4, I will not turn away its punishment, because they sell the righteousness for silver, and the poor for a pair of sandals. They pant after the dust of the earth, which is on the head of the poor. They divert the ways of the humble. A man and his fathers go into the same girl to defile my holy name. They lie down by every altar, and clothes take a pledge, and drink wine of the commandments in the house of God. Yet I who destroyed the Amorites before them, whose height was like the heights of the cedars, and he was as strong as an oak. Yet I destroyed the fruits above the roof benefits. Also, it was I who brought you up from the land of Egypt, and led you 40 years through the wilderness, to oppose the land of the Amorites. I raised up some of your sons as prophets, and some of your young men as Nazarites. Is it not so, O you children of Israel, says the Lord? But you gave the Nazarites wine and drink. They commanded the prophets, saying, do not prophesy. Behold, I weigh down you as a cart full of sheaves in the weight down. Therefore flight shall perish from the swift, and the strong shall not strengthen his power, nor the mighty shall deliver himself. He shall not stand whose hands the bow, and swift the foot shall not escape. Nor shall he who rides the horse deliver him. The most courageous man of might shall flee naked in the day, says the Lord. He starts out with the Israelites here, and he doesn't even give a reason why they're away. They're that bad right now in Israel. He just starts right off because, they're selling people for the poor for, silver and sandals. They're doing stuff to make the poor hurt. And the men, there's fathers and sons sleeping with the same woman. And then, and then he goes down. They're also the Nazarites, who are supposed to be set aside. They're supposed to have long hair. They're supposed to not drink wine. What are they doing? They're out getting them drunk. They're giving them wine, having them drink. I mean, they're telling them to do all this stuff, and they won't even let the prophets prophesy. So they've actually closed off the religion completely, haven't they?
Yep.
They're following their own ways. They're following the ways of all the other gods. And he's telling them there's going to be consequences for this. He says here in verse 13, he shall not stand who handed the bow, and swift the foot shall not escape. Nor shall he who rides a horse deliver himself. The most courageous man of might shall flee naked in the day, says the Lord. So wait a minute here. They're not even going to, they're going to be fleeing for their lives, aren't they? He's telling them, at least Judah, he told them, this is what you're doing wrong. The Israelites were doing so much wrong, he just said, you're just going to suffer the consequences. So we got to watch out. We can run into the same problems, can't we, as Christians?
Yeah, because history always repeats itself.
Yep. So we need to, as we read this, we got to remember what Amos is saying to these guys, so we don't fall in the same traps. So I'm going to stop there, because then that's verse 1 through 2. Let's go to prayer.